Hi there, my name is David Brett. I'm the editor of the New Westminster Times, and I'm coming to you again from the location of where a Cowichan village once was located in the background. We're standing on the shores of the main passage of the mighty Fraser River, where there's abundant industry, and over to my right you can see that these fuel derricks on highly industrialized land that has become the subject of a court ruling in favor of the Cowichan, awarding Aboriginal title to a large swath of this part of Richmond, including residential homes, businesses, and this has created a bombshell of reaction across the community and across BC and even across Canada, because it seems to have come as a surprise to many people, despite the fact that the court case was initiated 10 years ago and involved over 500 days of court time. This appeared to be the best kept secret in British Columbia. So at a meeting that was organized by the City of Richmond on Tuesday, October 28th, just a few days ago, the City of Richmond sought to bring out residents in the affected areas to hear from them, and also talked to them about the particulars of the case and why they were appealing the case, along with multiple other parties, including the Government of Canada, British Columbia, the Port of Vancouver, the Tl'uqtinus First Nation, and the Musqueam First Nation, all appealing this case. But when the residents were finally given the opportunity to come to the microphone, they seemed to be disinterested in the details of the legal vagaries of the case and why, for example, extinguishment is a good argument as opposed to not. They wanted to know why they were not informed that this case was proceeding 10 years ago when it commenced, or 5 years ago, or sometime reasonable time in the past. The mayor of Richmond, Malcolm Brodie, was lambasted by one speaker after another who pointed the finger directly at him, saying, "Why didn't you tell us?" The implication being not only they may have been able to lawyer up to fight the case, they could have organized their voices in opposition and brought up their collective energy to push back against the decision, which deeply and directly affects them. So on the question, this question of notification was a major issue, and it is now being discussed in the media. And this question arises, well, who should have, could have, would have informed? One question about the matter of notice, which has not heretofore been brought up that I've heard, is what about the media? Isn't it the media's job to bring matters of public importance to the people they serve? The local media here in Richmond, BC, the regional media across Vancouver and British Columbia. I have done some research, and from what I can tell, prior to 2025, a few months ago, when the ruling was made public, there was nary a single article written about this case. Now, if you can find one, please post it in a reply to this video. I have not been able to find one that in any way raises the alarm or tries to bring the issue to the public, to the fore, so the public debate can occur. So the question is, why? Why was the media, and if I may interject that our paper, the New Westminster Times, started business in 2022, and we have turned our attention to Indigenous land claims multiple times in various places, but not in Richmond because we're from New Westminster, but we've also covered Powell River. But all that aside, why is it the mainstream media and established media outlets did not talk about this, did not bring it up? No stories, no articles. I would say that it's because the mainstream media has been ideologically captured and is become effectively a free public relations department for Indigenous activists, justice activists in general, and they have been basically, they have embargoed themselves from covering any issue that might make them look like they're in opposition to the claims of Indigenous groups, First Nations across BC. Now, what has caused them to have this orientation? Well, it is because there is, call it this doctrine of reconciliation has been effectively manufactured, and there's a philosophy of reconciliation that has now become instantiated in law and in directives of the Government of Canada, directives of the BC government, that somehow if you raise an argument, say that the Cowichan have no claim to this land because they haven't been here for a long time, or because of overlapping claims. The mainstream media has touted a narrative that anyone who stands in opposition to these claims is racist, is a residential school denier. Now, against the backdrop of these land claims, we have this problem of decolonization, decolonial narrative. This decolonial narrative manifests in things like monument removals, city name changes, street name changes, school name changes, repudiation of people like John A. Macdonald. So following the press conference about the Kamloops 215 alleged unmarked graves, churches across Canada were burned and vandalized by the hundreds. Statues were torn down. A statue of Ryerson in Toronto was toppled. The head of the statue was sawed off and taken on a tour across Canada on a pike pole to symbolize the violence that is being directed at this evil colonial enterprise. So the media has participated in the embargoing of information that the public needs to know. So I'll give you another example from the mining industry. There's something happening in the mining industry that the general public doesn't know about, that we have reported in our paper. It's interesting that the historical context of the Cowichan claim arises around the time of the Fraser River Gold Rush, when tens of thousands, imagine it, if we look out here on this arm of the Fraser, imagine rowboats coming up the Fraser with not hundreds or thousands, but tens of thousands of American gold seekers, mainly from California, who had an attitude about Indigenous people that was the only good Indian is a dead Indian. Now, who was standing against the effective invasion of this colony, this area in the Fraser River, from this effective invading force? Well, it was James Douglas and the Crown, who stationed warships at the mouth of the Fraser to stop the American boats, to their great consternation, often disarming them and charging them fees for going forward. and the ones who didn't have the money were turned around. This was, there was a massive effort to protect Indigenous interests from this invading force. So at that time, one of the things that Douglas did and his government was to establish a system of mineral claims. Well, it may come as a surprise, or maybe not, that the kind of title that a mining company or a prospector might obtain to unearth minerals from the ground is very similar to a fee simple property title. It is something that is inalienable. Well, just this year, the government brought in a new staking rule. The old rule for staking a mineral claim was thrown out. You actually cannot acquire a mineral title in British Columbia anymore, unless you go through a consultation process whereby First Nations have a right to weigh in. So I said all that to say that when it comes to this case in particular, given the grave implications of the case, wasn't it the duty of the media to dig into this, write stories, and possibly cause alarm and reaction from the residents? And in closing, I would say this. In general, the larger percentage of the public in Canada has not been mobilized in any way, shape, or form like you see in the activist community. You have an alignment of environmental causes. When they mesh Indigenous issues with environmental issues, they call it eco-justice. Well, and then they also mesh the pro-Palestine movement with Indigenous rights. There's hardly a cause where the activist class of thousands of people, and very smart people, and people who are incredibly strategic in their communications and messaging, are not running circles around anyone who might dare to question the narrative. So I think what's going to happen going forward is that there's going to be a new kind of activism in Canada, and it is to stand up for the rights of average Canadians. They feel under siege, and they feel like they have not been informed. And there's going to be a backlash, not only against governments, but against the media. Because why weren't they raising the alarm? Why weren't they writing articles? Why weren't they featuring these stories on the front pages? Yes, the question of notice, in the Richmond meeting, they argued that the plaintiffs had a duty to inform. They wanted to put the burden of informing the affected title holders on them. And that's a reasonable position to take, because, and finally what I would say is this, is that, is it possible that the governments, the Richmond, BC, Port of Vancouver, or Government of Canada decided not to inform the residents because if they gave them an official letter from a governmental body that their title is in jeopardy, wouldn't their mortgage woes have commenced 10 years ago? Wouldn't they have to take that piece of paper and disclose it to banks, to realtors, and have it as part of a purchase and sale contract? It is possible that it may have prejudiced the interest of property owners more to know, and I don't believe that a kind of blissful ignorance is something that people should entertain. And I think, you know, as someone who started a small independent newspaper, please visit newwesttimes.com. We do need support. We do our part. We dig into these stories, and we don't hold back. We try to tell the truth. We're not lawyers. We're just trying to unearth the stories that are important here. So I believe that what has happened here, because of this, perhaps more beautiful in the past than it is now. It's just a site of the industry, and the fuel derricks for supplying YVR with jet fuel are behind me. It's incredibly critical infrastructure. What are they supposed to do with this infrastructure? This is a massive port, the Fraser River. How are they going to reconcile all of these things? So please visit our, follow us on X, and please support our newspaper, because we're doing something. I'm not here to pat ourselves on the back, but we are dedicated to covering this story thoroughly and supporting other people who are not afraid to speak their minds. Well, we have, for example, someone named Jim McMurtry, who writes as a columnist for us. He was fired from his job as a teacher, similar to the paramedic in Powell River. He was run out of his job. People are losing their jobs for saying things like, well, I believe my property rights are sacrosanct and cannot be overturned. Or I believe that there's an imbalance in the Indigenous reconciliation movement. Or I don't think this is fostering reconciliation. People who are fed up should not be prevented from speaking their minds. They should have their protected charter rights to speak up and speak out. People should feel emboldened, and that's what's going to happen. People are going to feel emboldened to speak their minds, to speak up and speak out. And I think the next year or two in Canada, there's going to be a radical change, because it's not sitting well. Now, some people might say people are overreacting, or they're misinterpreting the decision, or they're blaming the wrong people. This is a matter for the courts. The public, the media owes the public an explanation, not a, shame on you, tisk tisk, you shouldn't be saying that. They shouldn't be tamped down and told not to react. They should, if anything, there's an underreaction going on, and there cannot be enough of a reaction. So people should not be shamed for reacting. I don't believe the mayor of Richmond or their law firm should be shamed for saying that arguing extinguishment is a valid approach. That position should be respected. People who are arguing their case, including the Musqueam and the Tl'uqtinus First Nations, they feel like they've been overrun and like they've been steamrollered. So what I see happening going forward is an unleashing of people's voices to speak what they feel and ask the questions that they have the right to ask. So in that sense, it could be a good thing, and that's perhaps the only silver lining here is that, one, the decision could be very much overturned. There will be a political backlash. The media will wake up and stop pandering and acting like a PR department for whatever activist cause they feel is, something they believe in. It shouldn't be about what they believe in. It should be about facts and truth and history and reality. Set the ideology aside and let's get to the truth. And I think if we did that, we'd all be better off. Thank you very much.